What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Get the Bag podcast, episode 7.
Let's
We're
go.
moving on up. Yeah, I got my co-host Tim Park repping the Chiefs,
Yeah,
just
baby.
who just won the Super Bowl.
That's
I'm
it,
your
man.
I'm your host, Gladia Castro, and we have a really great episode for you all today. Um, how to pick your real estate market, or finding the right real estate market that works for you. Obviously, where most of our business is wholesaling, but this can apply to any other strategy. I think even commercial, I believe. So we're going to unpack some tips that we have for you, some tips that have worked out for us. But before we get on into that, make sure you follow us, hit the subscribe. We have our IG handles right to our right of our screen. Let us know. Yeah, if you have any questions, hit us up. We want to hear from you. But I like to say it helps with the algorithm, but make sure you tap that like button and like this video. So, without further ado, how to how to pick the right market. So what kind of talk to us maybe, Tim, on what your process was before, like when you got started into in wholesaling, like how you chose why you chose your markets. We'll go into that, and then maybe go specifically into what markets you're in now.
Yeah, so I think for me, when I first started, it was a little bit different. So I think Chris Jefferson, shout out to the U and Chris Jefferson. But when he was, when I first got it, he was just telling you kind of, work in your backyard because you
Hmm.
live there and you kind of know the area already. So it would be probably best to do that. As you know, we live in Los Angeles, so it's a more competitive market.
Right.
And but I chose to stick with LA, and then eventually I branched out to other markets. But how I picked those other markets were based on my comfort level because I used to live in those markets. Like I grew up in
Right.
Kansas City, that's why I rep in KC all the way. So I know that the city's gonna go bananas today because they got their parade. But uh, anyway, no, I picked those cities because I was more familiar and I could talk to sellers um, in a way to build rapport. That way, um, I could talk about what streets were there, or I can say, I haven't been in town for a little bit, but we buy in those areas and stuff. And just talk about different locations. Because if you're in a new market and you don't know much about it, you have to rely on other people to give you that information. And we'll go into that too when you're blindly go into a market and what you can do to educate yourself on that market as well too. But those were the main things. But some of the tools that we'll talk about today um, help me, close deals in those markets because I had to make sure that there was house selling or how many, or
Hmm.
what cities to target within that market. So there's a lot of
Right.
factors that go into it. What about
No,
yourself?
yeah, absolutely. I think that's spot on. I mean, at least when I got started, it was I also kind of did them in my backyard because virtual wholesaling, I think that had just started becoming a thing even more. Like people were adding that into their business because I think before COVID, people were in their backyard working
Right.
heavily in their backyard, and then COVID happened, and it's like, oh snaps! Like, what are we gonna do? And then they started learning or adding the virtual wholesaling, which is really the same as any wholesaling. As long as you have a tight process, it's the same amount of time. It's actually more efficient because you're not having to drive to the sites, or drive to the properties. You're able to, be a lot more efficient. Everything is done electronically.
Right.
But I think when we got started, it was like, yeah, start off in your backyard, get to know the process a little bit more. And so for me as well, I think at the time I got started, I was living in the Sacramento area, which is Northern California, which I'll break down this later, but it's a secondary market, meaning it's not a heavily condensed populated city. It's sort of like it's a secondary market, so it's
Mhm.
somewhere in the middle. And so that I think I was really helpful for me. So I pulled a list in that area, and then the other secondary markets between the Bay Area and Sacramento. So Sacramento's up Northern California, and
Mhm.
then like the Bay Area is a little bit down below. So I chose markets in between those two major areas. Um, and that's how I closed my first deal, was in one of those like smaller cities.
Mhm.
And from there, then I kind of was like, okay, then I think virtual wholesaling started becoming more than a buzzword, and it's like, hey,
Mhm.
like you can actually do this. And for me, I just kind of got into it. I did all the things. Like I think I got into Columbus, Atlanta, and I think that's one of the tips as well, is the kind of don't jump on the bandwagon either. Like just because somebody says, "Hey, I'm closing deals here," doesn't mean you should be jumping in that too.
Right.
Especially if you don't have like the systems behind you. And for me, I just like you were saying earlier, drove blindly,
Mhm.
and picking these markets without having boots on the ground, without understanding like what areas were safe and not safe, and like just understanding the neighborhoods. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So it took some practice. I struggled with virtual marketing because again, for me, I didn't have a team. I didn't assemble a team to start off with. That was a little bit difficult for me, and like finding a reliable boots on the ground. Obviously, like I didn't know how to reach out to agents, or like I just didn't have it all together. That was kind of
Yeah.
pretty much my first year.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's a common thing. And so I think what we're going to break down today, I mean, a lot has changed even the last year in terms of how we're approaching finding a market. But I think there's better ways to work smarter instead of having to figure it out, having to assemble a team. Why don't you just join somebody who already has a team, right?
Mhm.
So that's kind of how I started. And so I was all over the place. And then finally, I kind of like had a pullback. And now the markets I'm in specifically, I'm in SoCal because, I live here now. So I still think like it's helpful to kind of, especially if you have a connection. So with you, you have connections to buyers. That would be the only
Mhm.
reason why. If we both didn't have connection, or if you don't have connections to buyers, I probably wouldn't pursue this market.
Mhm.
Um, and so for me, it's like if you have relationships with people in specific markets, that's a good advantage for you. So that's one market. I have another market up in Northern California that I've started to pick back up again because I have a specific buyer who I basically JV with, and
Mhm.
that's just easy deals right there that
Right.
I can work on. I have Tennessee, which has kind of become I'll wholesale, but it's kind of become my um buy and hold sort of market, where if the opportunity presents itself, if I have to wholesale it, I will. But the main goal is to actually like buy something there creatively. So that's kind of my Tennessee, and then I just opened up a new market working with my buddy Chuck in Florida,
Oh,
and then
cool.
and like just partnering up with him. So those are kind of my main areas I'm focusing on right now. And I think again, I've just learned to simplify it. I think for starting out, because there's so many distractions, so many people want to say, okay, do this, do that. And like that was really confusing me. And so I just kind of had to just simplify my process and work not as hard, work smarter.
No, I think, n what you had described is very similar to me too, and, just understanding, like, okay, well, if I'm gonna expand into another market, what are the factors that I need to look at, right? And, I think a lot of people, like you said, jump on the bandwagon. "Whoa, what
Yeah.
market are you in?" Because 'Cause they're seeing people do deals there,
Right.
and they're not thinking about all the other things that go into when they pick that market, right? They're just
Right.
looking at the, end, outcome, right, of that particular person that's doing it within our group or whatever the case may be, right? So,
Right.
and then they wanna jump on the bandwagon. I think what was it, a year ago or something? What was the city that everybody was trying to move to?
Oh,
Like,
Birmingham.
Birmingham.
Birmingham. That was everyone's like trying to wholesale there because they say,
Yeah.
hey, everybody's in Birmingham.
Everybody was in, it was like, it was on YouTube, it was on everything, and then, like, we're like, "Just stop going there," like, it's just crazy. It was it was bananas.
Not to say
Yeah,
it's not a hot market. It's just
yeah,
like you need to have your process, your systems.
right.
And I think we had kind of wrote down a point or a question is like, well, how do you find that right market? How do you know when something is a hot market? And I think the biggest thing is like, okay, are there cash buyers? That's the easiest way that you can identify that, and
100%.
that's the easiest way to check is the list source hack. If you haven't already,
Mhm,
just literally YouTube list source hack, and there's plenty of videos that you can find where you're able to do the hack and see the hottest zip codes where cash buyers are paying. The other one is PropStream. For the most part, everybody has PropStream, or just ask
mhm,
a buddy to be like, hey, can you put in this city and see if there's a good amount, like, it's a hot market when like there's been sales in the last 3 months and it's like all over the place. So that's kind of a really like super simple way to see, okay, is this a hot market? Now you can go deeper. Now this is something I would have probably recommended a year ago, is like, hey, do your research,
mhm,
target, areas where it's, there's sales going on, there's cash buyers, know your market, understand the community. Is there development? Is there,
mhm,
I think I even put down Chamber of Commerce, which kind of lists out like what's happening in the city. Looking up into the census data, but I'm kind of scratching that now at this point, because I had written that out, and like understanding your primary, your
mhm,
secondary, tertiary markets. Your
mhm,
primary markets being your bigger populated cities, and then secondary is kind of like somewhere sweet in the middle, that's like not too congested but it's hot enough, there's enough buyers happening. Then
right.
tertiary is more like rural, way out in the neck of the woods. So that would have been my recommendation last year,
Mhm,
but I still wrote it down because I think it's still good to know. But and this is something we've been talking about in the U, is like, forget all that, build out your process or understand your marketing channels, like whether you text or you cold call, but
mhm,
reach out to somebody who's experienced in those markets, so you don't have to like waste your time researching.
yeah,
Reach out to somebody, and like the example is like, my guy Chuck in Florida. Him and
mhm,
I have like been talking forever, and I was like, you know what, like I should just team up with you. Like I'm
mhm,
really interested with land, I don't have to deal with tenants or anything like that. And he just told me, okay, like we're I just pulled a list the other day. He just said, okay, I have a builder buying in these areas, pull a list for this.
mhm,
And that's what I did, and now I'm using the same marketing channels I do already, but now it's like he already has his team. He has like a title company. He has like people that he builders that he connects with. So
right.
why would I waste my time research, especially if I'm starting out? And the only reason why I'm doing it now, even though I would consider myself experienced, or we've been in the game for a minute,
Right.
is because I still have a job. I don't have the time to research. That would take me hours to like really research, find a team, reach out to agents. Like I could still do that. But and if the opportunity presents itself, but I'm trying to
Mhm.
go. I'm trying to close
Yeah.
as many deals as possible. So if you're just starting out and you're trying to figure out a market, reach out to somebody in those markets that's closing deals that now you'll have to do your due diligence, but reach out to those people, build relationships, see how you can add value, and then be like, okay, what list do you need, and focus on the acquisition side if that's what it is. Some people like disposition. I know like your dispositions guy, that's like your
Mhm.
your bread and butter is like building relationships. But like, hey, if there's value you can bring right away, there's nothing like bringing a lead. Like Tim, you're not. If I bring you an LA lead, you're gonna be like, nah, I can't work that. Like you're not. Like, who's gonna
No.
say no to that?
Right, right, exactly.
So that's the business model I'm leaning into this year. Is
Yeah.
like I'm JVing the crap out of everything. I don't care, because I just closed a deal last week or the week before,
Mhm.
where I did it on my own, and that shit was terrible. Not It wasn't terrible. I mean, the
Just
money
took a
was,
lot of time.
it took so much time and effort. I'm like, I could have just passed this on to some. Imagine if I would have passed this on. I'll take, you know, 8K over,
Right,
15K if needed, because of all
right.
the time that's needed. So that's where like it's not about the money, it's not about the hustle. It's about
Mhm.
like building a structured business model that works, that's efficient, that you
Mhm.
can scale. That's the biggest thing. So
Yeah,
it's funny because I wrote down these notes and I was telling you like, oh, we're, let me put down some things. But like when I think about it, I'm like, guys, you don't
yeah.
have to waste all this time.
I think you bring a good point up because it's, definitely I the strategies that we use, like the tools we use can still work. It's just like if you already have someone in that market pulling lists, or if that you have someone already has a relationship with like developers or buyers in that area and knows a good title company or escrow company, you might as well just team it up if you locked up the deal, right? And
Right.
they will be able to tell you, one, if you locked it up too high, especially if you're in the beginning,
Yep.
or two, you know, actually see the property as well if they're local to that property or have someone that they know can go look at the property that they trust too. So
Right. Right.
that these are all like small little things that are going to excel you further and do more deals because you are teaming up. And I think the strategy of researching, it does take a lot of time, especially you mentioned not having a 9 to 5. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people are new to real estate wholesaling and still have a 9 to 5 and don't know how to spread out their time to do that. And
Right.
the best
Or
way
like
to
where
do
to
that.
start. Like
Yeah.
there's no introductory video on like there may be some. I'll take that back. I'm sure there's some, but sometimes, you get caught up in a wormhole going through YouTube University.
Mhm.
So, for us, we joined a community which is already an advantage. We have a whole network of people. So if you haven't joined a community, it's definitely worth it. You can definitely do it on your own and just reach out to somebody on social media who's closing deals, and be like, what do you need? Like what areas? And you may be a novice or kind of a beginner in the beginning, but you're going to learn a lot by working with this person, like
Mhm.
just from the 1 or 2 months I've started working with Chuck. I'm learning a lot about the whole vacant land process and
Mhm.
what to look out, what questions to ask, how can I ask better questions for sellers. I mean, it's pretty straightforward with land. You don't need to
Mhm.
go through a property condition. It's more like, what's the condition of the land itself, but
Mhm.
just like things to consider. So it's like it's not like you're just going to be punching leads. You're going to be also gaining knowledge from the people that you're working with, especially if they're good people.
Yeah.
They should be kind of teaching you the ways because you're bringing them money too. So it's like it's a
Mhm.
win-win all the way through. But I totally agree. I think going into this year, it's you want to make as much money because with the market shifting, you don't
Mhm.
know what to expect.
Right. Right. And that's the best way. Like it's okay. Let's say you're teaming up with somebody, they have the buyer, that's on the dispo side. So if you
Hmm.
decide to go on the market, like you said, list source hack, always hack, look that up. We also eventually will provide a resource for that as well too. But I think for people that are very new in doing this business and trying to find a hot market is, I think I found all my deals through that list source hack, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, that was good, and then when I started to do more networking, it was, okay, this realtor couldn't sell this house and then, got me in this area. So, if let's say you are in a totally new market, you don't have any relationships, no one else is in that market that you know of, then it's, things like calling the top realtor in that city, right? And having conversations, say, "Hey, I'm a new investor in this market. Can you tell me a little bit more about what are the hot areas in that market?" And get a little bit more information, just not just off that list source hack. It's more
Right.
like,
Digging a little bit deeper.
yeah, what's building in the area? Is there a new stadium coming there? Or, there's a lot of things that maybe the city has approved that is going to increase the value of these houses. So builders or, rehabbers are all about, purchasing in that area. So,
Right.
you know, that's what real estate agents are a great resource for that. And I think you can utilize it because they've done the research, especially if they're doing really well in that market for themselves, because obviously they have the relationships with fix and flippers or builders to list these homes and do well for themselves. So that's
Right.
another thing. If you don't have anybody or any relationship into a market, that's something that you could naturally do and just have a conversation with 3 or 4. Don't just rely on 1. You call
Right.
3 or 4 of them, and then compare your notes and say, "Okay, this is a great market," like, if there's a highway, is there a certain side of that highway you need to focus on rather than the other side because they're selling more on that highway than the other side of the highway, so,
Right.
just, like, small things like that.
Yeah, and you'll learn whether you work with somebody or as you do, if you do have the capacity to do research, is it's very there's pockets in like every market or every city that you're in where buyers, and this is why it's like people always say, should you bring the seller or bring the lead? Yeah, seller, reach out to the sellers first and then find a buyer, or should you find a buyer? I think in this specific market, I think maybe well, backtrack when we started a couple years ago, it was the other way around, right? It was like just find the lead. There's plenty of
Mhm.
buyers. But now because of the market that we're in,
Yeah.
we're having to I recommend reaching out to buyers first, getting their criteria in terms of what it is that they need. And then once you have that criteria, then you can kind of build that out. Cause I think that's
Yeah.
honestly the best way that's the most affordable. Cause, people can buy all this data. But if nobody's buying that area, you just wasted money for no reason. So I think that's where, you can also kind of work smarter in that
Mhm.
respect and
Mhm.
gathering like and communicating with as many buyers as possible. And again, there's so many ways you could do it. You can talk to title companies, you can talk to ask people around,
Mhm.
prop stream, do the prop stream hack to get like LLCs, list source to get the areas, and then like these. There's many ways to get access to buyers. LinkedIn, we've talked about in the past, people who are
Yep.
actively buying, just reach out and be like, hey, I'm marking this area. What areas specifically are you looking to buy in, or are you still buying in this area? And they may come back. And I think we had Jeff on a couple weeks ago. Shout out to Jeff. And he was talking about what he started doing is like they started like calling back their buyers in their
Mhm.
markets and be like, hey, are you still buying? Like I have some deals. And he was saying like they had one buyer in one market that was basically buying all of their deals. Like he's like, we closed like 12 deals with this buyer, and then they tell us, hey, we're not buying there anymore. Hit us up in like 3 months. That's going to affect your business. That's kind of being proactive as well. So
Mhm.
you have to be proactive in your market constantly. That's the whole point of being like a business owner, is you have to adapt to the changes happening. So when you may have to do the same process over and over again. So the
Mhm.
market that you chose, maybe even if you are partnering with somebody, is kind of slowed down. It's time to kind of reevaluate. Like, okay, what are my buyers saying?
Mhm.
Okay, oh, let's check out this other market that's still working, and let's not put all our money in this market because nobody's buying right now. Let's work here. So once you kind of establish a process and finding a market as you learn, you can apply that same process in other markets, because
Yeah.
you probably will have to reevaluate. And it can even be within the same market, but maybe it's a different zip code now, right? It's a different neighborhood now. So this isn't always like one and done. Like once I find a market, that's it. It's like it's constantly evolving. You're constantly having to adapt. So I think that's an important part as you're as especially beginners are starting to like understand the what's the word, the kind of like the cadence, or
Yeah.
like what's kind of going on.
Mhm.
The is it predictable? And for
Mhm.
in some ways it is, but just wanted to kind of throw that out because I think that's the important part, is like markets change all the time.
Mhm. Yep. There's an ebb and flow with the market, and
Correct.
and different cities are flowing different from other cities. So that's another thing is that like the
Right.
West Coast is different from the East Coast and the Midwest and Southeast or
Correct.
whatever the case may be. So that's why the coasts are their markets are going to bounce back faster if there's a dip, right?
Right.
And then in the Midwest, yeah, it's going to be a lot. Uh, takes a lot longer for them to bounce back, just because, you know, the the value of the houses aren't um, as expensive as they are here in on
Right.
the coasts, right? So that's why there's some lag time there, but just understanding, and you'll get that when you're new, like, it will start to all come together, but, when trying to decide on, your market or a new market, these are, like, things that you guys need to factor in, and,
Right.
these are, things that we use on a daily basis too, like, we're going into because I think I went into the Houston when I looked at Houston market, I was like, that's another non-disclosure state. So, I just team up with somebody out there, right? And then, they know the market, they've been doing deals out there, so I just pull a list and then, have people calling on them, and then, if we get a deal, then I'll send it to them. So
Right.
that's just one factor, right? And it's funny, like, I never thought I'd do Hawaii, but someone sent me a deal from Hawaii, and I was like, "Huh, crazy." And that just made me look at, all the factors that we just talked about, like,
Right.
what is selling? What's the average price? Are there buyers in Hawaii? And then come to find out, the buyers are like it's a network of, like, family, and it's very community oriented
Oh yeah,
there, and
Hawaii is very much
yeah.
the locals. Yeah,
The
totally.
locals are very loyal to each other, and so if you're not really in that market, like, and know that really well, then it may be a little bit difficult to navigate the conversation around the seller, or, even work with a buyer because, you may be new or whatever, but if you have a deal, of course, they're gonna talk to you, but, it's just every market is gonna be different on how you approach it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, to your point, but if you're working with somebody local, you have an
Mhm.
advantage there too. So, like, if you're whether you're marketing in some area that you're not really familiar with, like for me, like calling Tennessee, for example, like I don't know crap about. Um, I've never been to Tennessee, or I mean, I've been to Florida, but certain areas, I'm not familiar with it, and so that's where I kind of really rely on the partner I'm working with. To kind of give me those insights of like, hey, this is what you should kind of consider when you're speaking with the sellers, or whatever they like. It's actually really, really helpful. So I know we're kind of coming up on time, but
Mhm.
I think the biggest thing is I'll kind of break it down for you guys in terms of tips. So um you can research all, if you have the capacity and you kind of want to do this on your own. I don't recommend it, but say you have relationships with buyers already, and you want to focus on your acquisition side. Research the areas, do the house hack, or not the house hack, do the list source hack. See what the hot zip codes are, verify that information, like ask around, and maybe ask your buyer, ask title companies, ask other investors. And then once you kind of get an idea, then you could start marketing there. Um, and then understanding the markets specifically. So you have your primary markets, which is like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Dallas. Those are really, really heavy, as they say, really difficult markets because everybody, all the big wholesalers, all the big investors are marketing, spending thousands of dollars a day, if anything, like to get in touch with these sellers. So it's really
Mhm.
difficult. Secondary market, I think, is always the sweet spot because it's kind of away from the main market. So it's like your Frisco, Texas. For us, it's Sacramento in California, or even within the LA County, there's like specific areas that you can be in. Focus on those areas because those are less competitive. But the main thing is like getting a good process down. But if you want the simplest way, which is kind of what I'm doing, and I recommend, is reach out with to people maybe that you kind of like. have a good understanding. Obviously, if you join a community, that's easy. But reach out to people in specific markets that you know are closing deals, that you can verify they're closing deals. They have relationships with buyers, they have boots on the ground, they have everything. Reach out to them, be like, hey, I want to work with you. I want to learn. I just, whatever you need, like, let me know what areas should I focus in. I'm going to buy a list, I'm going to market to it. And then any leads, I want to work with you. Obviously, you want to have a conversation first, but get an understanding from them first. So it's kind of like you're gathering that their criteria, because they get their criteria from their buyers,
Mhm.
and then pull a list, and then focus on your acquisition side. Focus on your marketing. Like, what is it going to be? Is it going to be SMS? Is it going to be cold calling, direct mail, whatever the case may be, and build that process off of that. Get the leads, consult with your partner. Hey, I have this specific market, or I have this specific lead. Seller wants this. What do you think is a good MAO? Get the MAO, which is the maximal allowable allowance, I think, or offer. Sorry, maximal
Offer, yeah.
allowable offer. Meaning, like, this is to get, like, to get some cushion, you have to be at this number. And then but you go to the seller with that. Be like, hey, we'll have to be within this range. Get it under contract, and then hand it off, and then
Mhm.
focus on the next deal. Imagine the time that you're saving instead of having to go through the dispo process. You're handing it off to somebody who already has a process set in place. So it's really not like rocket science. It's really straightforward, and this is something I'm applying to with everybody.
Yeah.
Like, my entire business model is being switched. So focus on your process, understand, be consistent with that.
Mhm.
So focus on building that JV model in a way, and then tweak things as they come. Because that's things aren't always going to be perfect, and then focus on that. Like, that's literally it. Like, just do that and see where, like, try that out for 3 months and see where that gets you. I think the hardest part, of course, is consistency, being
Yeah.
consistent with that. But if you have a
Mhm.
job, like, you're just handing deals off. Like, you may have to still check in with the seller, of course, and answer any questions and do the JV agreement. But if I don't have to deal with researching buyers, communicating with the title company, like, that's a win-win, and
Mhm.
I'm closing deals every month. And then eventually I can kind of make a choice of, like, do I want to keep partnering up, or do I want to, like, break off and do my own thing?
Right.
That's the beauty of, like, having those options. So for you guys listening, I hope this was super helpful. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Tim, did you want to leave the audience with anything before we head
No, I
out?
think you did a mic drop on that one because that was hella
I literally
gems
am just
there.
outlining what I'm doing in my business.
And I think, if you take everything that we talked about today and apply it to your business, or if you're just starting out, helping people, or JVing with people is probably the right way to go in a certain market as well too. But um, you know, uh, if you need to go to, YouTube, list source hack, that'll find the top, zip codes in that area, pull a list and start, calling that list, and then, just JV and on that. But also, I wanted one point I did want to touch on was the JVing part will help your momentum in your business too,
Correct.
because if
That's a good
you
point.
if you are doing deals by yourself, and then you're having a dry spell, but you're able to actually JV with somebody and do a deal, that's just going to help your momentum with your business go
That's a great
further.
point. That's a
So
really, really great point. And I think that was my biggest motivator in all of this. Um you just said Tim looking like Mahomes, bro.
you right, baby.
I love that. But that's a great point. I think momentum, as you learn, as you get started in this business, is the biggest thing, because we've all been through it, where it's like we close a deal and then our next deal doesn't. We don't see our next deal 6 months later, a year later, right? And it's that momentum. It's because maybe you lost steam, stuff came up, and, like, you just paused, and, like,
Mhm.
because life happens sometimes. But if you can, like, work on these deals where it's like, hey, I'm just handing you off the contracts or these leads, and then I'm just collecting the rest, you can literally close, like, a deal every month doing that.
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
by doing that. And like you can close up to, I mean, I know people probably like 40,000 a month. Imagine like 10 grand, 10 grand every month. Or up to that at least. So imagine even an extra $5,000 a month would do to you. Like, how would that change your life, having an extra $5,000 from just closing a deal? So
Mhm.
um keep that momentum is what's going to keep you going. It's going to, because you're going to, you're going to go through your pitfalls. Not every deal is going to close, so you have to keep the deal flow going, and what better way than to partner up with somebody? So really, really great point. But hope you guys had a great have a great day. Hope you guys got a lot out of this as well. We'll be back next week. We're kind of leading into the end of the month. We do have some guests lined up for March, so really, really excited for that. Stay tuned for those updates, but feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. And don't forget to follow us on IG. Click like, subscribe, do all the things on YouTube. We're here for the people. So hope you guys have a great rest of your week. We'll connect with you guys then. And yeah, have fun virtually from the couch enjoying the parade today.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
So,
Uh,
yeah, to end it, thank you guys for tapping in today. I hope this helped you out, but we'll be back next week as well, giving you more gems. We're excited to be back
Always.
next week. So, yeah, you guys have a good week, and